All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
Good morning, everyone. As punctual as they want me, here I am. If it was the Michael Shore Show, we'd have started, 8 minutes ago. I gotta, when you're guest hosting for a host, you got to do it the way that people want it, and that's what we're doing here today. So it's great to be here. I believe Mark is back tomorrow. Is that correct, Kim?
That is correct. Mm-hmm.
So it becomes Mark Thompson, the Mark Thompson Show for real again tomorrow. Hope you all are safe and warm and out of harm's way. And we've got Albert back today as well. Albert, are we allowed to say that you were in Hawaii to the people here?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I had a great time.
I'm doxing by saying that, right? Okay.
You're not doxing me. You're just making everyone jealous, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly. And did you have a good time in Hawaii?
Great time. Golf, food, ocean. Perfect.
Did you get tired of hearing aloha and mahalo and you think it's all an act?
No, I love it because my girlfriend's a local and she hates it when people also think I'm a local because I'm definitely from the Bay Area. So she hates that.
That's pretty great. I love that. So we I think what we should do is, everything is messed up, right? And I think, Kim, we know that because we've seen what's happened in just a couple of days of the Trump presidency. And we are one day, as I promised yesterday, we are one day closer to January 20th, 2028 today, which I think a lot of people happy without editorializing. People who love the presidency, people who love politics like me. It's not always about, party for me at all. It's about people. And I just don't like what this guy has done to the presidency, which in a sort of corny, hokey way, I really like a lot. The president.
Yeah.
But,
you mean someone who has respect for America, Michael Shore?
Yeah, I mean, and my, that's my judgment a little bit. I just don't, I don't like the biography. I don't like the resume. And I'm going to disagree with presidents of every stripe and party, but the office is something I think is pretty cool. But anyway, we will we digress a little bit because the biggest, well, I wouldn't say it's the biggest, but you said it best, I think, in before the show. You said, well, in fact, hell has frozen over.
Yes, so if you consider Florida to be hell,
Florida, District of Florida, Matt Gaetz's former congressional district got snow. And not only that, I think we all know, and these do not count against the 48 seconds of sports, but we all know my affinity for the sport. Yeah, look at that map. There is snow all throughout the Southeast. Mississippi, Biloxi got it on the beach. There were 4 inches of snow in the French Quarter in New Orleans. If you get a chance, go online and look at some of those beautiful images of snow falling. But this is Canal Street in New Orleans. Just recently, the site of a horrific shooting. There's a guy playing hockey on Canal Street. I mean, he's stick handling. He's got one puck. He's got skates. The kid knows what he's doing. He's a good skater, good player. Yeah, exactly. If ever I've been envious, that is. I think that's
never been anything like this.
Well, in fact,
it's a once in a generation snowstorm, right? Like this doesn't happen very often.
No, it doesn't happen very often at all. And it's, my favorite thing are the people in the South who are, the MAGA people in the South. So you tell me there's global warming, it's freezing here and we're getting snow. That's not warming. Oh God. I saw someone on the news say that yesterday. You don't get it. It's pretty cool.
That video's awesome. Love it.
Albert, again, this isn't going to count against my 48 seconds of sports, but the Sharks, after last night, might want to sign that New Orleanian hockey player there.
They made a trade this morning. I thought it was for this guy. So,
yeah, of course. I'll tell you about the trade so you can tell me about it in 48 seconds.
Yeah.
But that is a pretty cool thing to see. And, it's fun for kids, I'm sure, all throughout the Southeast to get snow days when they will never again have one. And and to be out there building snowmen in South Georgia is probably a lot of fun too. So it's a cool thing. The weather out in California a little different. They're expecting a cold snap and some rain in the LA area, which is welcome certainly after the fires. But of course, with it, they don't want too much rain because it brings the possibility of mudslides and debris flow and all of those things, because all those root systems that were burnt out when the fires happened, the Palisade Fire and the Eaton Fire specifically, those root systems are what kind of holds the land together. And when rains come, it just collapses. So they're expecting a bit of rain. There's been no rain in Southern California since October, or since October 1st. There's been 1/10 of an inch of rain, which is outrageous. But it's cold in the South, so there's no global warming. Returning to Washington now, I think we'll talk. There's so much to talk about with the pardons, and it's amazing.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Well, I know it is. The talk about the pardons, it started with Biden and the preemptive pardons, both how almost unprecedented it was. I mean, Gerald Ford's pardon of Nixon and his people was a little different. Biden pardoned people whose names hadn't even come up as possibilities, and then there were the people that he didn't pardon. We talked about Vindman yesterday, and there are some others. Michael Cohen was brought up as well, and yesterday, I think that every sort of event has some people that we associate it with all the time. So these January 6th pardons came through, and you'll recall the QAnon shaman, the man who was dressed sort of like a caveman, who entered the U.S. Senate.
There he is.
Yeah,
with his big old horns and his painted face and his naked
his
chest.
tattoos and all of that. And his name is Jacob Chansley, and he was found guilty, was sentenced to 41 months in prison. A year and a half into that, he was sent to a halfway house. And then in 2023, he was released from that halfway house. And he is one of the recipients of a pardon. And just so you get an idea of who these people are and what that pardon did, it facilitated the QAnon shaman saying that he's buying mother effing guns after the pardon. He shared that he just got the news from my lawyer. I got a pardon, baby. Thank you, President Trump. Chansley was photographed inside, as we saw. Now I'm going to buy some mother effing guns. I love this country. God bless America. J6ers are getting released and justice has come. Everything done in the dark will come to light. But it turns out that everything that was done in the light has now come to dark. And that's really one of the sort of, more than just a slippery slope, one of the really dangerous precedents that were left by these pardons. And they're not being welcomed politically, even by people in his own party. So Trump did this, and Republicans don't know what to say about it. John Thune, who is now the majority leader in the U.S. Senate, a senator from South Dakota. He beat Tom Daschle, who had been a majority leader in the Senate. John Thune, the job that John Thune has is one that evades answers. So it's not just that John Thune is evading, but he's basically doing what the person in that position does, which is to say, we're looking at the future, not the past. Of course, it's a dodge. Of course, it's reprehensible to say that. Have an opinion. You're a U.S. senator. You're the majority leader. Majority leaders let the rank and file say what they will, generally speaking. Tom Tillis, a Republican from North Carolina, warned before the pardons he can't agree with Trump's decision to commute the sentences or pardon that swath of January 6th insurrection participants. He said the move raises legitimate safety issues on Capitol Hill. And then he also attacked Biden's pardons in his final hour of office, which he's allowed to do. But the word specifically from Tillis saying that it creates a safety issue is incredible. Jim Langford of Oklahoma, a reasonable, religious, kind of quiet, reach across the aisle senator. You might remember Jim Langford because he was the one that architected the immigration deal the bill that Trump while not president, was able to push aside. He said that he said that I think if you attack a police officer, that's a very serious issue and they should pay a price for that. I think we need to continue to say we are a party of law and order, and that is incredibly important to be able to protect those who are protecting us every single day. Lisa Murkowski and Bill Cassidy, two Republicans who you recall voted to convict Trump after his second impeachment trial, didn't like it either. Cassidy said, I'm a big back the blue guy. I think people who assault police officers should do the time if they did the crime. And of course, Murkowski says, I don't think the approach of a blanket pardon that includes those who caused harm, physical harm to our police officers that resulted in violence. She's disappointed to see that. So there's pushback from Republicans on this. I guess the advantage of being a lame duck president the second you take the oath of office is that you don't really care what people in your party say. But these are people who have, like Cassidy, who's up for re-election. I think Tillis may be retiring, but I'm not certain of that, but I think that's true. I think that they say these things and they should mean something, but they don't in this sphere. And shortly before taking oaths of office, J.D. Vance, the vice president of the United States, said that those who committed violence that day obviously shouldn't be pardoned. Well, they were. Asked why Vance's assertion was wrong, Trump said, well, only for one reason. They've served years in jail. They should not have served. And then he said, excuse me, and they've served years in jail. These were people who actually love our country. I didn't see that on display that day, and neither did a lot of members of Congress that I've spoken to, a lot of my colleagues in journalism. So it's a terrible sort of thing to say that they were people who loved their country. If they did, they had a very funny way of showing it. Trump, for his part, has said that, you know, when it comes to these pardons, he thinks that it's the right thing to do. He also said that he has never been a better friend to, there's never been a better friend to the police in the White House than him in the history of our country. I don't think he has a great grasp of the history of our country. I don't think he could cite Chester Arthur's civil service reform that was pushed through after Rutherford Hayes was out of office. I mean, that's very wonky stuff, but the police have gotten help from other people in other ways. And this, Kim, doesn't seem to help the police, right? I mean, these are people who attacked the police, both the Capitol Police, the DC police.
I thought the Republican Party was, you know, supposed to be behind police. Aren't these the folks on their trucks who have the stickers that, you know, support the police and the blue line and all this? And these are the people that go to the Capitol and try to smash the American system of democracy. It's despicable. It's 100% despicable. And if you are truly an American, that's what you would believe, that these people are not for America. These people are against America. And does anybody look at the QAnon shaman and think, let's give that guy a gun? Right. Really?
Yeah, he clearly loves his country. I mean, look, Thomas Manager, the Capitol Police Chief, says when there's no price to pay for violence, then, you know, it will happen again against law enforcement. Sends a message that politics matter more than our first responders. And he's right. I mean, that's what this says. He did a comparison, as Randy Bruling points out. He did a comparison by saying, well, you know, why shouldn't these people get pardons? There are murderers who are not getting punished this year. That doesn't solve any problem. That creates more of a problem, and that's a terrible place to be. Trevor Starr in Hollywood, thank you for the $10.10 donation and act of support. It's appreciated more than anyone can know, especially Mark and the team that's here when I'm not. They really appreciate that. Trump says he wants to keep criminals out of the United States with no proof that they are, and at the same time he releases convicted criminals back into the U.S. I mean, the hypocrisy is astonishing. You know, Donald Trump sat at Jimmy Carter's funeral, and I'm sure he listened to, all of the lovely things that were said by Gerald Ford's son, Stephen, by Walter Mondale's son, Ted, reading words that their fathers had written, by people who had served in the Carter White House and had come up with Carter his whole career, including his children. And one thing that you can say about Jimmy Carter, if you want to criticize anything about him, he's a president. Of course he can, but he wasn't a hypocrite. He really wasn't in the way that we see hypocrisy these days, and we see it on display in this administration. We've seen it in others, Democratic and Republican, just about all of them. Jimmy Carter wasn't that. Maybe I thought optimistically that some of Jimmy Carter's record would have seeped into to Donald Trump, but well, maybe there's time still. Maybe it takes a moment. Trump, for his part, got a letter from Joe Biden, from President Biden, in the Resolute desk. Ronald Reagan started this tradition of leaving a letter for your successor. Trump wouldn't say what it was in. He said it was a very nice letter. I could show it because I think it was a nice letter. It was a little bit of an inspirational type of letter. Enjoy it, do a good job, important, very important, how important the job is. President added it was a positive for him in writing it. I appreciated the letter.
Did you see how he almost didn't find it?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
He's signing all these, pardons or whatever, executive orders. And a reporter said, "Hey, did President Biden leave you a letter?" And he said, "Well, don't they usually leave it in the drawer?" And he starts opening the drawers on the Resolute desk or whatever desk he's put in there.
Yeah.
And he opens the drawer and he finds this envelope and he's waving it around. Oh, I guess he did. And he thanks the reporter, saying it probably would have been months or years till he found it.
Yeah, it's true. Because why would he ever open that drawer? Like, there's not a great deal of curiosity there, right? Unless someone left him a number. But in any case, it was so the January 6th stuff was part of the story in these first few days, and the intensity of the first few days of any administration is always watched a lot more closely and by more eyes than it will be in a year. Certainly, I mean, there will be things that get a lot of attention. Don't get me wrong, but Michael T says, I guess that drawer was not his snack drawer. Yeah, there you go. So we see a lot of what's going on. The J6 things, among them, we will and have to talk about. What's happening with ICE and what's happening with his desire to kind of change law when it comes to immigrants and deport people, and that he's threatening to not work with different cities if they are sanctuary cities to give them other aid, specifically Los Angeles, should they continue to not cooperate with federal authorities on enforcement of immigration. And you heard also in his inaugural address about there being two sexes, and what he's done in a couple of days, he's alienated everybody except for felons. And what I thought was there was a pre-planned service that was being led by the head of the diocese, the Episcopal diocese in Washington, Marianne Edgar Buddy, and the vice president, the president, their spouses went to this service as a matter of course. At the end, after giving her sermon, these are the remarks that Marianne Edgar Buddy gave to the president, which I think is a show of almost bravery, because it's hard to say anything to a president directly, especially something that president may not embrace. Here's Marianne Edgar Buddy.
Let me make one final plea, Mr. President. Millions have put their trust in you. And as you told the nation yesterday, you have felt the providential hand of a loving God. In the name of our God, I ask you to have mercy upon the people in our country who are scared now. There are gay, lesbian, and transgender children in Democratic, Republican, and independent families, some who fear for their lives. And the people who pick our crops and clean our office buildings, who labor in poultry farms and meat packing plants, who wash the dishes after we eat in restaurants and work the night shifts in hospitals, they may not be citizens or have the proper documentation, But the vast majority of immigrants are not criminals. They pay taxes and are good neighbors. They are faithful members of our churches and mosques, synagogues, wadara, and temples. I ask you to have mercy, Mr. President, on those in our communities whose children fear that their parents will be taken away, and that you help those who are fleeing war zones and persecution in their own lands to find compassion and welcome here. Our God teaches us that we are to be merciful to the stranger, for we were all once strangers in this land. May God grant us the strength and courage to honor the dignity of every human being, to speak the truth to one another in love, and walk humbly with each other and our God for the good of all people in this nation and the world. Amen.
So she is a bishop. She's a bishop and the head of the head of the Episcopal Diocese in Washington, D.C. And a friend of mine wrote to me, and I won't name him, but I thought it was interesting. He said, so far the TV networks and Washington Post have capitulated to Trump out of greed and cowardice. Does our salvation lie with the church? And it's interesting because one nation under God, and it's forced down the throats of people who don't want to hear about it a lot. But it is the backbone in very many communities, and we can't deny it, even if we are not religious, and we shouldn't deny it if we are. The religious institutions create small communities in places where there are people who would otherwise be left out, whatever the religion. And frankly, I've interviewed imams in mosques in Salt Lake City. I've interviewed rabbis in the Deep South. There are so many different places where religion does help this out, and this was done on a grand scale in front of the president and vice president. And it's a shame we wouldn't take a look down at to take a look at Donald Trump, who was kind of looking down when she was speaking. J.D. Vance was kind of surprised at what was being said, almost as if he thought it was inappropriate. But I can't say that because that was just my read on his facial expression, and that's not fair. But I would say too that when he was asked about it later, Trump said that wasn't a very exciting service. It wasn't a very good service. It wasn't a very exciting service, which it was law. Everything is about division, and here she was saying things that that maybe you would plant a seed of hope into the mind of the president.
Yeah, don't hold your breath.
No, I know. I mean, it was like I was saying with the Carter funeral and hypocrisy and things. You have to be optimistic and hopeful about things. But yeah, I wouldn't hold your breath either.
Well, here she is saying, treat people with dignity and respect these people. We were all immigrants at one point, right? For our families all came from somewhere else, unless you're, Native American. But here she's saying this, and what does the Trump administration come out and do? They say, listen, ICE agents making arrests, we'd like you to use common sense, but now churches and schools are fair game. These are places that have been off limits. These are places that, you don't want people to be afraid to send kids to school. You don't want people to be afraid to seek medical care. They're here in this country. What do you want them to bleed out?
Yeah.
Do we want, we know people are here. So you want to take it out on little kids and not give them an education? I don't understand. I understand the anger where people feel like immigrants are getting things they shouldn't be getting, and we're not spending the money on Americans. And I understand that line of thinking, but I just feel like it doesn't fly in the face of reality when you look at the fact that these people are here. They're here. And so that means that, we don't want them to be sick and spreading the disease. We want them to be healthy. We want children to be educated, because likely they're going to stay and become members of society. So I don't understand the thinking that these aren't people to be taken care of. And it's
Right.
not, as
It
this
doesn't make
bishop
sense.
said, yeah, no.
Yeah, even from the standpoint of a capitalist, it doesn't make sense, right? I mean, so like it's true. Trump posted later and about Bishop Buddy, the so-called bishop. She's a bishop. That's what they call her. The so-called president. I mean, it's the same as saying that, right? I mean, he's a president.
Right.
The so-called bishop who spoke at the National Prayer Service on Tuesday morning was a radical left, hardline Trump hater. He capitalized radical left. She brought her church into the world of politics in a very ungracious way. She was nasty in tone and not compelling or smart. Again, whatever her words were, they were said with grace, and they were beautifully put together, and there was no tone, neither nasty nor anything, maybe compassionate, if anything. She failed to mention the large number of illegal migrants that came into our country and killed people. Many were deposited from jails and mental institutions. It's a giant crime wave that is taking place in the USA. Apart from her inappropriate statements, the service was very boring and uninspiring one. She's not very good at her job. She and her church owe the public an apology. That's what Donald Trump said about what, I would argue is some real eloquence from the pulpit. And again, this is where we are now, and so be it. We have to report on everything that everybody's saying, and that's what the President of the United States said about this. And then, I think what we should do now, Kim, because we're talking about the president and politics and policy,
Yep.
is bring in our friend John Rothman, friend of the show.
Absolutely.
Someone who is a presidential historian and a political analyst. And John, thanks for being back on with me. So, before we dive into other subjects, I sense that you probably saw what we talked about with Bishop Buddy, but in general, what the new sort of old normal is that we need to get used to, and how to navigate that. How to hear something that is being said from a place of salvation to a president who is hearing it only in political tones, and that's where we are now. We can't deny it or fight it, just sort of how to navigate that.
There is no navigation. You have Donald Trump. There is no smooth sailing with the President Trump. He is a disruptor. That is his goal. He has made clear that he is a vindictive President Trump. And I reread last night The Imperial Presidency by Arthur Schlesinger Jr., which is a recounting of how presidents can abuse their authority. Of course, the last part of the book deals with my old boss, Richard Nixon. But it is clear to me that what we face now is an imperial presidency. Donald Trump is issuing executive orders in record numbers. He is making declarations and statements. I spoke on Inauguration Day with Kim and our audience about the fact that there's never been an inaugural address like the one delivered by Donald Trump. So what you have to take into account is that for the next 4 years, we are going to have a constantly turbulent encounter with the American presidency. And the other thing we have to recognize, in my judgment, is that there are two schools of thought in the United States. One school of thought supports Donald Trump, and no matter what he says or what he does, they are going to back him. And the other school of thought, frankly, reflected in large measure by what you and Kim have talked about, and what Mark talks about, and what I talk about, is that we find Donald Trump's approach to America antithetical to ours. But we're going to have to live with it for 4 years, and it's going to be, I think, a turbulent 4 years. We haven't even mentioned the Panama Canal, or Canada, or the Gulf of America. We haven't talked about Ukraine yet. We haven't talked about the Middle East. There are so many dimensions here, and we haven't talked about the fact that Donald Trump and Melania Trump are now doing Bitcoin, and he made a fortune on Inauguration Day with what he put out. I mean, every norm that I am familiar with as a so-called scholar of the American presidency has been violated, which means that I now have the task of adjusting, of trying to make clear to people my concerns. I want to be clear. My political hero was a man named Wendell Willkie, and he was defeated for president by Franklin Roosevelt on Armistice Day 1940. He delivered a speech called The Loyal Opposition. What we need now is a loyal opposition, and I would go further and say a constructive opposition. Where Donald Trump does something right, we have to be supportive. I had a discussion this morning with someone about going into churches and schools, what ICE is going to be doing. May I tell you that it is not just churches and schools. We in San Francisco and those in Los Angeles, because we're primarily a West Coast-based area, but we know it on the East Coast too, where you have sanctuary cities. Donald Trump is threatening to cut all aid and support for sanctuary cities. And may I quickly, just because I'm using a scattergun approach, there's so many different things. Global warming doesn't exist in the Trump universe. Tell that to our friends in Los Angeles. Tell that to our friends in Washington, D.C. Tell that to our friends in Europe. And by the way, cutting off the World Health Organization. Unbelievable.
Yeah, these are things. Yeah, we visited yesterday some of these things you're talking about. I'm glad you're.
I'm sorry. Unfortunately, yesterday I was unable to tune in.
No. Of course. I'm just saying that I'm glad you're bringing them up, because I don't think stopping talking about them is constructive. If just one more person hears about it, it's that much better. And I think it's so I think that you're right. And when you said we haven't talked about, we're not talking about the Mark Thompson Show. You're talking about the body politic and
in general.
Yeah, in general. And that's, that's true.
And people don't understand the implications. That's the thing. These are profoundly important moves. And that's why I go back to the imperial presidency. I urge people to read Arthur Schlesinger Jr.'s book, The Imperial Presidency.
So here's what I have to interrupt you for a second. I read that book. I read it years ago, and it was recommended to me by another, probably a colleague of yours who worked in the Nixon administration. I read it. I loved the book. It was a big book. And then I heard you say you reread it last night.
Yes.
I hope you read passages of it and not it in its entirety. Otherwise,
I read the whole thing. I'm a very quick reader.
How long is that book? Like over 500 pages? That's
it's about 450 pages.
Wow. And you watched hockey too. That's amazing. All right. Okay. Go ahead.
No, you watch hockey.
That's right. That's right. I forgot. Yeah, I got mixed up.
But forget the book. Just think about what it says. An imperial presidency. Congress is not being consulted. Congress is not being able to pass laws. Donald Trump is simply signing. This is what we see, if I may be so bold as to say, in countries that are not democracies. It concerns me greatly. I would rather see the tangle of discussions with members of the Senate and the House, and we're not seeing that. In fact, I listened to Speaker Johnson, and there's no criticism of Donald Trump. There's no criticism of any action. The Republican Party, as I once knew it, no longer exists.
Right. And Mike Johnson is a speaker unlike any I can think of right now, who and I'll let you tell me that I'm wrong, but who is really a puppet of the president. The speaker is usually the bulldog who goes up against the president, even the president of his own party, right? I mean, Tip O'Neill going to Jimmy Carter. I remember that. I remember
Tip O'Neill going after Ronald Reagan.
Well,
whether it was your own party or not, it was the idea that Congress is an independent body. It doesn't take orders from a president.
Right. And Mike Johnson does.
Yeah. I reread Kings of the Hill by Dick Cheney and his wife, Lynn, which is a brilliant book about Congress and the leadership of Congress. This is a complete abdication of what our founders talked about as a balance of power and a check on the power. And it says here, Trump plans to seize the power of the purse from Congress. He's going to try everything he can. But let me tell you, that's not the first president to do that. Richard Nixon did the same thing. Harry Truman, in a way, did the same thing. You remember Harry Truman went after the steel industry, and he was overturned in the Supreme Court. A great case. Will this Supreme Court be an independent court? That's another question. But what I think we have to understand, and what bothers me is, if there are mass roundups, if there are pardons issued for people who have really committed crimes, if we have a president acting unilaterally without any consultation, I'm fearful for our future. Now, I had to explain to my children, who are now old enough to really grasp everything, they're in their 20s and 30s, that we have protections. That's what the whole idea was with an equally powerful Congress and judiciary. If that's gutted, then we really do have one-man rule. And this country cannot, must not ever bend a knee to one-person rule. And I would say that about a Democrat or a Republican. It doesn't matter to me. I want the vigor of debate. I want the vigor of dissent.
Right.
And the actions that Donald Trump has taken in the last 72 hours are revolutionary. I drew another analogy, if I may quickly. The Reagan Revolution in 1981 was a revolution in its own sense, but it is nothing comparable to what Donald Trump has done. Historians are going to write about these days, and I think weeks, with real concern about the balance of powers in the American system.
Right. And the people, the problem with historians writing about that is the people who know it, and I'm talking about contemporary historians, the people who know it and feel like they can't do anything about it. The people who don't realize it support it blindly anyway. And that's a place that we haven't been. And, I look back to, you were far more intimate to the goings on in the Nixon years, obviously, than I. But at that time, there was still this notion that nobody was above the law, and what was going on was abhorrent to people who respect the presidency and the balance of power and the three branches of government, et cetera. And now you have an electorate that doesn't respect that, and that's what has me frightened. Does that resonate? Am I wrong about that?
No, if you go back and you listen to the David Frost interviews, you will find one clip, not more than a couple of minutes, if that, of Richard Nixon saying when a president does it, it's legal, saying that a president was above the law. I rejected that then, and I reject it now. There is no individual who can be above the law. Otherwise, Michael, we might as well go out and commit crimes because nobody's going to punish us, because we're going to be pardoned, because we're going to be let up. You opened with the so-called shaman.
Yeah.
And now he's going out to buy guns. I mean,
Right.
there is, and look, the head of the Oath Keepers is out of jail. And I listened this morning to his ex-wife describing her real fear and trepidation. Maybe it's too soon for the panic to set in, but the arrogance of power in this administration will certainly, I think, cause tremendous reaction in this country.
Yeah, one would hope. It didn't. The man was reelected, and there wasn't anything that wasn't known. And so I think the onus then goes on the other side. We had yesterday Pam Horowitz on the show, and Pam is the widow of Julian Bond. And Julian would have said, she said, he always said, don't agonize, organize. And the other side really has to organize better than they were able to do for a variety of reasons. Blame can be put anywhere, but blaming doesn't solve the problem anymore, unfortunately.
For those who are too young to remember, Julian Bond was a truly great American, a genuine hero. And, we don't have people like that. I just finished reading a biography of John Lewis. People like that, people of Barbara Jordan of Texas. I'm now citing African Americans. I can hear in my head Barbara Jordan's speech.
Her voice was talking like that. She had a great voice.
Yeah. By the way, she keynoted 4 Democratic national conventions, record-setting. But look, what's the bottom line here? The bottom line is that I go to bed at night, but I flip on the news at 2, 3, 4 in the morning to hear what it is that Donald Trump has done. We are going to be on the edge of our seats. And let me make one other comment. I know you have other questions, but I just want to say to you, I miss talk radio. I miss profoundly the fact that we were able 5 days a week, and in some cases I worked 6 days a week, to be able to interact with people who were pro-Trump, anti-Trump. But do you understand there's no forum now? And my son said something to me this morning. We listen to the news. We listen to Fox. We listen to CNN, MSNBC. These are not real news programs. These are opinion programs. The days when we had a Walter Cronkite, a Chet Huntley, a David Brinkley, Frank Reynolds, those days are gone. And that also disturbs me, because we need to have the ability to hear straight news and then be able to debate it. And we've lost that. Anyway, how do we regain it?
We've also evolved into things like this, which I think some people prefer, and some people who came up through talk radio probably prefer talk radio. But I
prefer debate. I just prefer good old-fashioned debate, taking both sides of an issue. I've defended Donald Trump and I've opposed Donald Trump with equal conviction.
Yeah, understood.
I had a speech coach, Michael, who used to say, I'd come in at 6:30 in the morning, and he would give me a topic and I'd talk about it. And then he'd clap his hands and he'd say, flip sides. So I learned to argue both sides of every question. And that's what we're missing. This limited vision is really terrible.
It is, and it's a way. Sometimes we're nostalgic for a way we never were, but we really were that way, and it doesn't seem like we're on the cusp of getting it back. And we don't. I don't know who it was, but very recently I heard someone talking about this. It may have been President Biden, but I don't think so. Just how there aren't editors anymore. There aren't assignment teams that go through the balance of what makes an important news story. They go for the low-hanging fruit so much of the time. And reporter friends, including myself, I've worked at news organizations where my scripts don't get vetted. That's horrendous, right? I mean, I make mistakes. I could be loose with a fact or be putting in an old fact. And when I worked at places where my scripts would get vetted and fact checked, it was so much better. It made not just my work better, but it made the whole organization and the whole idea of journalism better. But again, I think that everything is so immediate now that I can't see we going back to it. Parmenia said, my dad always used to watch Washington Week on PBS. By the way, it's still on and you can watch it, and it's still a good show. And it's a good way to get your news and to get to see what's happening. It isn't sexy. It isn't, fun. It isn't like the repartee is on a really low level in terms of joviality, but you don't have to have that. It doesn't have to be sexy to be factual and interesting, I think.
Yeah. I'm glad, by the way, that you mentioned, and I'm sorry I didn't hear you yesterday about the international situation. But people need to understand a president of the United States has many functions. One of the functions is he is the chief foreign policy designer of this country. And what Donald Trump says is going to affect us all. President took us out of the World Health Organization, took us out of the Paris Climate Accords. The president has made aggressive statements about Panama and about Canada. And all of these things, the problem, Michael, is it's too much. We could come on here and talk for hours about what has happened, but how do you narrow it down? How do you focus on what really matters? And part of the problem is in these opening days of the Trump administration, he is taking so many actions that I believed he would do it. We talked here on the Mark Thompson program about his commitment to the 2025 project. And take a look. That's exactly what's happening.
Yeah, no question.
But you know what? We have to keep talking about it. We have to keep urging people. And by the way, when Donald Trump does something right, we have to applaud him. When he does something wrong, we have to be critical of him. And it was not unusual what the bishop did yesterday. There have been other presidents who have sat in church services and been criticized. Lyndon Johnson, Richard Nixon come to mind during the Vietnam War.
I believe at the Riverside Church, William Sloane Coffin, he would do it all the time.
Sure. Yeah. And may I say, Forest Church, Frank Church's son, was brilliant in his articulation. So this is not unusual, but we do live in a time of tremendous tensions. And one of the reasons I support the Mark Thompson program, one of the reasons I am here with you, is because this is a forum that needs to be aggressively pursued. People need to contribute. And I don't get paid for anything here at Mark Thompson. I volunteer my time. But we need to have these kind of forums, and I hope people support the Mark Thompson program.
Well, thank you for that. I do too, and I'm glad you mentioned that. A couple of John Watson says, I watch Washington Week on YouTube every Friday night. It's there. You can find it for sure. And Nancy Wright says, in fact, Biden did say something about the media. So that's maybe where I heard it. We should also say a bit of news is that there was a shooting at a high school in Nashville today.
Yes. And the shooter is dead. The shooter is
dead, and one other student dead. Dehagval, I don't know where the emphasis is, who's in the chat says, my granddaughter is at Antioch High School in Nashville. Thank goodness she's safe. 2 dead, 2 injured. I'm so sorry that your granddaughter had to endure that, and I'm so happy she is safe.
And you will note, please, that Joe Biden tried during his presidency to do something about these shootings. Please note that Donald Trump has taken the line of the National Rifle Association, hook, line, and sinker. And it's very, very disturbing.
Even a fractured NRA, even an NRA coming out of bankruptcy that doesn't wield the power with report cards in Congress that they once did. It's just it's a shame that nothing has happened. I go back to Newtown, and I was in a newsroom that day when it happened, and we all thought, all right, well, this is the one. This is the one that's going to change everything, because how small and precious and how tragic it was. The small and precious those kids were, and how tragic it was. And even Sandy Hook Promise exists as a charity today, and they haven't been able to.
Let me remind you, the assassinations of Martin Luther King Jr. and Robert Kennedy shook the nation to our foundations. Lyndon Johnson delivered a speech to the American people, a man from Texas, a man who used a gun regularly, going hunting, appealing for the question of limitation on guns. And if you, I know that you can find the clip of what Johnson said. It is so important, and people don't remember. It is just, to me, incomprehensible. If I have to have a driver's license to drive a car, you ought to have a license to own a gun. And let me be clear, I understand that the automobile is not mentioned in the Constitution. And the argument is, but the guns are. And my answer is, you will see in this administration, Donald Trump has made certain promises to the American people relative to crime. But if what he did with these pardons is any indication, his disrespect for the men and women in blue, his lack of respect for law enforcement, the idea that someone could attack a police officer and be given a presidential pardon, a complete pardon, meaning even if you're convicted of a crime, you can, once you have that pardon, you can go out and get a gun. That should shake us to our very foundations.
No, it's an extraordinary thing when you think about it. I mean, it's beyond anything I could.
What do you do, Michael, when you have extraordinary thing after extraordinary thing happening every day? And how do you focus on it? You
run against it, you report it, you hope that it matters, and you try and keep finding ways for it to matter, because we've entered an era where nothing does, it seems, or very little does, and there's a receptive audience, and there are so many different layers to it. The cult of personality that he has created, it's all very, very complicated, and so I don't know the answer to that question, but there are a lot of us that are trying to think of what it might be.
Well, one thing I can promise you, I intend to raise my voice, whether it's here, in other forums. I'll be speaking this afternoon at a forum here in San Francisco. I intend to continue to voice my concerns. I don't know whether it'll make a difference, but I can tell you that I refuse to accept the idea that I'm impotent, that I'm unable to affect what happens. And I hope that's the way all of our listeners and those in the media who have the courage to speak out will. That's what we have to do. And we have a congressional election coming up in less than 2 years, and that's going to be critical as well.
And so on that, I want to ask a couple things before we let you go, because yes, there is a congressional election. There's a lot that can be done, probably not in the next couple of days, but because it's a lot of reaction right now. A couple of our listeners and viewers wanted to ask you, we talked about this at length yesterday, about Elon Musk's seeming salute that we saw the other day. Are you familiar with that? And
I watched it, and I watched his commentary afterward, and I watched a collage of images of what he has done in other circumstances. I consider Elon Musk to be a genius. He is a man of remarkable foresight. But I would remind you, so was Henry Ford, a man of remarkable foresight. Henry Ford was a vicious anti-Semite. It did not diminish his genius, but you have to take genius with a grain of salt. Elon Musk has done amazing, amazing things, but to put a man who is unelected and who is now back the furthest right party in Germany scares the living bejeebers out of me. And you're playing now what he did. It's just very upsetting. And by the way, you'll notice he's standing at a podium with the symbol of the President of the United States of America.
Right.
And he shouldn't have. Billionaires have a voice. They've made money. They can make political contributions. But did Elon Musk give a Nazi salute? I don't think so. I like to think he knows better. I think what Elon Musk did in a moment of enthusiasm was to stretch out his arm, put it on his heart, and he explained it that way. But
I believe that too. I mean, there were a lot of the viewers yesterday were saying I'm wrong, that it was clearly that's what
he's not a Nazi. But I want to point out he is supporting a far right political party in Germany, the largest party in Germany.
Then I would argue, John, isn't there something Nazistic about that? I mean, I also agree and didn't think it was a Nazi salute, but you can't say that he's not that. I just don't think he did that. If
he's not. Look, he's not a Nazi, and I take that into account. Yeah. But he is a man who has endorsed and made statements which I profoundly disagree with, and which I think we all need to be very, very careful about. Nobody who's unelected should have that kind of influence with the President of the United States. The fact that he had billionaires sitting at his inauguration, placed ahead of members of Congress and his own cabinet, should be very disturbing. You know, I always remember, I love presidential history. What was Thomas Jefferson's inauguration? Very different. But what was Andrew Jackson's inauguration? It was a people's party. Everybody was invited for Jackson's inaugural ceremony, and people got into the White House and messed it up. But the idea was the White House is the people's house, as is the Congress. It's who we are.
By the way,
I see that Anoy Marie, who I adored and who worked with us at KGO, is saying it was a Nazi salute and he did it multiple times. He does a lot of things multiple times. I don't think anybody in his right mind would stand at that podium and give a Nazi salute. And he did say, it was just exuberant, this is a man who is dangerous, but let's label him for what he is in terms of what he really is. Whether he raises his arm or not, we've got other concerns, as we're seeing now with the whole question of investment and what he is doing there. And the suggestion by the president that he buy TikTok. I mean, let's stop and think here for a minute what the implications are. But I love all of the reaction. So,
anyway. There was a lot. Kurt says Elon is the son of two apartheid parents. He knows that arm movement means. And to that point, and to his influence, CNN said this shortly after President Donald Trump announced a new massive AI infrastructure investment from the White House. fist buddy Elon Musk tried to tear it down. They don't actually have the money, Musk wrote on his social media platform X. SoftBank has well under $10 billion secured. I have that on good authority. Trump said the investment will create a new company called Stargate to grow artificial intelligence infrastructure in the U.S. The leaders of SoftBank, OpenAI, and Oracle say, well, I don't have all of it, but yeah,
no, you've gotten the general drift. And the
Yeah.
most important single thing is that's not the job of a president of the United States.
Right.
The president of the United States has defined functions, and I hope he sticks to them, even though I disagree with him on almost everything he's doing.
Yeah, and that he's going to have an office across the street from the White House in the Eisenhower Executive Office Building is unprecedented is a word that we're going to say so much that it's going to lose its meaning, but I can't think of anything.
If Dwight Eisenhower were alive today, he'd be rolling over in his grave.
Right. That's well, if he were alive, he wouldn't be in a grave. So there's that. But yes, if he knew, if he could tell him, he would certainly roll over in it. But yeah, it's and then SoftBank, the American Day says SoftBank executive found dead in London the night before. Yeah, I don't know all the details of that, so I can't.
I don't want to link into conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
All you have to do is look and listen to what Donald Trump is doing on a daily basis. That in and of itself should raise concerns by all of us. By the way, just so we're clear, I'm not dismissing some of these things, but if we don't keep our eye on the ball, if we don't really analyze what Donald Trump is doing, the idea that he is saying ICE agents can go into schools and churches, who are in schools? Kids. And if you're a parent and you're here illegally, are you going to send your kid to school out of fear that, well, something might happen? And, you know, the ramifications here are really incredible. So we better stop and think carefully about what's happening.
Yeah, indeed. Brian Reich sends in $18, supporting the Mark Thompson Show. Thankful for John, his time, thoughts, input, sincerity, and wisdom. 18 equals life. That is the Jewish 18. Chai, yeah. So there you have it. Some support. Luis also giving $4.99 earlier for the last time. There is no global warming. The evil space laser used against Florida. Damn you, Dems. You know, he's saying that.
You know, can I just say, I'm waiting for when Tulsi Gabbard comes up for her hearing, and she will speak about Jewish space lasers again, which she said caused forest fires here in California last year. And they're thinking about confirming her. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, no question. John Rothman, thank you for your time. Tell me again where people can read and hear what you have to say.
I do 2 podcasts. They are no more than 10 minutes each day. One is Around the Political World with John Rothman. There's no charge for that. And the other is The Voice of San Francisco. When you hit that, you go to podcasts. I do a daily recording for them. And it's my thoughts and feelings and concerns. And I want to, again, urge everybody to support the Mark Thompson program. And we have to keep talking to each other and talking to the world. And this is a great vehicle to do it. And Michael, thank you for allowing me to be with you today.
No, happy to have you here. Pointing out, too, that it was Marjorie Taylor Greene, as our listeners and viewers have said.
Marjorie Taylor Greene, yes. But Tulsi Gabbard endorses that kind of stuff. Right. And it's just but thank you for the correction. I have to tell you,
that was our astute listenership that was pointing that out.
May I say to our astute listenership, 3 cheers for you.
All right. Take care, John. Thanks so much. Gordon says thank you to John R. and thank you to all of you. Kim, some.
The Mark Thompson Show.
There we go. The Mark Thompson Show.
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is. They keep having to remind me. I know it's the Mark Thompson. I know.
We just want to make sure, that people don't start calling it the Michael Schur Show.
Yeah. You'll be rid of me tomorrow.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Shadow Stevens. This is the Mark Thompson Show. Keep to yourself.
Make it up. So what I think we should do now is 48 seconds of sports, and then Kim, can we do the news after that? And,
I love it.
then we'll talk about the environment. So Albert, aloha and mahalo. Come on in. We have a couple things to talk about in sports. One of which is, and I hate to bring this up, we got to do it quickly because we're almost out of time. The Sharks last night, they had a 5-1 lead. What happened?
5-1 lead. I decided to turn the game off because I thought, oh, easy win. And also the Sharks decided to do the same. And they blew a lead. They lost 7-5. I don't know how many unanswered goals. Five unanswered goals there.
Yeah, it was 5 unanswered, and then they got an empty netter, so really 6, but that one doesn't count. Not a great loss for the home team or the road team, as it were, but they had it in hand, so they were doing some things right, and then they just let it fall apart. I hope it didn't seem to be on Georgiev all the way, but
your old pal, yeah,
my old pal. Guys, if you don't like the segment, it's almost over. Tennis overnight. Amazing straight sets, Yannick Sinner, but we talked about Djokovic yesterday and what an amazing match he played against.
Fun antics in that match too with Alcaraz, right?
Yeah, exactly. They're such two good players. Clark Gillies, who played for the New York Islanders for many years, won Stanley Cups with them. I couldn't stand him because I'm a Rangers fan, but he passed away yesterday. So condolences to Clark Gillies. The winners of the games this weekend, Albert, will be the...
I'm hoping not the Chiefs. Not the Chiefs, anything but the Chiefs this weekend.
So we're going Bills, and then and then Commanders, Eagles, we're going to go...
Bills Commanders would be very fun. I'm sure the NFL would hate it, but it's probably going to be Bills Eagles. At least I'm hoping for.
I think that's what it'll be as well. And we are at 46, 47, 48 seconds. We're all done. All right, thanks. We brought it in right under the wire, as always, because of the crack staff here at the Mark Thompson Show. 48 seconds of sports all over. And we got to sneak in the guy skating on Canal Street in New Orleans. In fact, and that was a sports story, kind of, but it was outside the parameters of 48 seconds, which is nice. I think we move now to, and we have Randy saying Bills Commanders, Cajun Fish and Hound pulling for the Eagles. John Watson says it'll be the Chiefs. All sorts of Bills Commander from Mars. Everybody's got an opinion, and we move on now to the news with Kim McCallister.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McCallister, and this report is sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. It is so good. There is, as we pictured here on the Mark Thompson Show, a rare storm in the southern United States that has produced record snow from New Orleans to parts of Florida. It is shifting away from land as Americans now deal with the aftermath of the storm. The impact expected to be felt for days in southern cities that really are not used to this type of precipitation and freezing temperatures. Louisiana saw its first ever blizzard warning on Tuesday. Houston's 2 major airports were closed for the day. But, oh yeah, climate change isn't real. A new wildfire growing in the Los Angeles area. The Hughes fire broke out near Santa Clarita yesterday afternoon. It burned 500 acres, according to the Watch Duty app. CAL FIRE says it is 0% contained. That fire comes as crews are still battling the Palisades fire and the Eaton fire that started just over 2 weeks ago. 2 people are dead, 2 others injured after a shooting at a Nashville high school happened this morning. Police say 2 female students were shot by a 17-year-old male student. The shooter then turned the gun on himself. One of the students died along with the shooter. So sad. iPhones with TikTok installed are listed for thousands of dollars on eBay. After the brief ban in the United States, those who deleted or never downloaded TikTok apparently been left in the dark since it's not available on Apple or Google app stores in the United States. Some iPhone owners who kept TikTok downloaded are now selling their used or brand new phones because apparently TikTok is so important that we all must have it. The Pentagon is sending an additional 1,500 active duty troops to the southern border. According to multiple reports, a U.S. official confirmed the news that on top of the 2,500 service members already at the border, ordered there by the Biden administration. The Justice Department, meanwhile, is threatening to prosecute government officials who stand in the way of the federal crackdown on immigration. In a memo yesterday, the DOJ outlined President Trump's plans to challenge sanctuary city laws and said those who decline to prosecute immigration cases will be put under investigation, potentially leading to prosecution. President Trump says many of the issues of the past 4 years wouldn't have happened had he still been in office. He sat down with Fox News today for his first Oval Office interview since being sworn in. Trump also went after Democrats during the sit-down with Sean Hannity. He said the past 4 years showed their policies to be horrible. The entire interview airing at 9 p.m. Eastern on Fox News. President Trump also now revealing the contents of this letter from former President Biden. Biden told Trump, the American people and the people around the world look to this house, the White House, for steadiness in the inevitable storms of history. Trump released the text of the letter to Fox on Wednesday. Biden added in the letter that his prayer is that in the coming years, there will be a time of prosperity, peace, and grace for our nation. That is wishful thinking, but definitely a positive message from President Biden. There are slightly more Americans becoming satisfied with how democracy is working in the nation. A Gallup survey showed that while most Americans, more than 6 in 10, are dissatisfied with how United States democracy is working, about a third reported they are satisfied. The move was a 6-point jump from the number of people who said they were satisfied in December of 2023. Satisfied with the way democracy is working. Pasadena is extending its do not drink water notice for communities impacted by the Eaton fire. The Pasadena Water and Power Department extended the notice on Tuesday. The utility department says the extension affects 4% of its impacted water accounts. The impacted residents are being told not to use the tap water for drinking, cooking, brushing their teeth, washing dishes, making ice, and more. Until further notice, they are being told to use bottled water for that instead. The mayor, speaking of sanctuary cities, the mayor of Huntington Beach is pushing for the city to become a non-sanctuary city.
What?
Yeah, I know. Mayor Pat Burns says the declaration would help law enforcement better follow federal immigration protocols under the new Trump administration. Mayor Burns wants the city to back all of the administration's efforts to enforce federal immigration laws. Huntington Beach's 7 conservative city council members are expected to discuss the possible non-sanctuary city declaration at Tuesday's meeting.
Sayonara, sucker!
Federal investigators are on the hunt for 2 men accused of robbing a U.S. Forest Service firefighting strike team in San Bernardino County. Authorities said last Friday the men stole critical firefighting equipment out of a San Bernardino National Forest fire engine. They got to the equipment in the middle of the night by forcibly opening 3 locked compartments on the fire engine. It happened in the parking lot of a hotel in Rancho Cucamonga, where the strike team was stationed during the strong Santa Ana winds. So here they come to help, and they're ready to help, and they get ripped off. Honestly, it's just crazy. The nominations are out for this year's Razzies. Those are the awards that celebrate the worst in cinema. The Golden Raspberry Award nominates the worst films and performances of the year. Leading the pack this time, Joker, Folie à Deux, with 7 nominations. This leads the sequel supervillain origin story. Lady Gaga and Joaquin Phoenix were nominated. Phoenix won the Oscar for playing the same role in the original film. Other films up for consideration include Borderlands, Madame Web, Megalopolis, and Reagan, with 6 nominations each. The winners, so to speak, will be unveiled on March 1st. So there you go. And just in case you're thinking, hey, movies sound pretty good right now, Netflix subscription prices are going up again.
What?
The streamer announced Tuesday the standard plan without ads is increasing by $2.50 up to $17.99 a month. Its ad-supported tier will go up $1 to $7.99 a month. If you have the premium tier with 4 simultaneous streams, it's going up to $2 to $24.99 a month.
What the hell is going on in the United States of America?
Yeah, I thought prices were supposed to come down. Come on, Netflix. Are you not in line with Trump? The price hike comes as the company reported nearly 19 million new subscribers in the fourth quarter, ending December 31st. So there we go. This report is sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. I have my hibiscus tea today. It is the best tea, the best coffee that you will find. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. We tracked it down and we found it just for you. They love us and we love them. It is all organic. The beans are fresh and sourced from women-owned farms, and there is quite the variety. Please check it out at CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. If you love coffee, you'll see a bunch of options for you there. They even have a half calf if you're working on your caffeine consumption, and they have decaf coffee as well as the best teas you will ever taste. Really love the vanilla iced tea. They have a Moroccan mint that is amazing. So CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. And if you do find something that you like, please use our exclusive Mark Thompson Show code that'll get you 10% off. At checkout, you type in Mark T and whatever they're selling on the website, CoachellaValleyCoffee.com, you get your 10% off. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. And they're really, really nice because often they'll throw a little extra into your package and it arrives just a couple days after you order. So CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. I'm Kim McCallister, and this is The Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Y'all can all go to hell, and I'm going back to Texas.
I misspoke.
And I wanted to apologize to the Asian community, the Asian American community.
Why are you yelling?
It was great. I loved it.
How would you handle this? We could try ignoring it, sir.
They pay me a lot of money for having attitude.
There's never been anything like this.
We've never seen anything like it before.
Nobody has ever put something like this together that I've ever seen.
Have you ever seen anything like this?
There is nothing in our history that quite compares to this.
I think I'm the most honest human being, perhaps, that God ever created.
God bless America. The end.
Someone did this to spoil our Christmas.
Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God.
Sayonara, sucker!
You know what, pal? You created havoc and chaos.
I don't think you should apologize for how you feel.
Do I hit it long? Is Trump strong? Huh?
Who is having that conversation?
Wow, that was a lot. There was a lot to listen to on the way out of news there, Albert. I don't, for my Coachella Valley coffee, I don't need my mug to say anything on it. That's what I do.
The coffee speaks for itself.
Coffee speaks for itself, and if the what does he say? The so-called bishop, if the so-called host of this show doesn't send me a mug, I'll figure out a mug on my own. That's
you can always go to getmarkmerch.com and buy your own, Michael Shore.
Yeah. Hey, which one do you use, Mark Thompson?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to do that, though. I'm just not going to do that. Welcome back to the show. I'm Michael Shore. We're going to be joined soon. I would say probably in the next 15 minutes or so. We'll be joined by Belinda Waymouth, and we will talk about the environment. And we thank John Rothman for having been here. One thing that's happening in D.C. in the next couple of days will be the confirmation, the Senate confirmation of Pete Hegseth to be the Secretary of Defense. So we'll get to that in a second. But an affidavit came yesterday, submitted by Hegseth's ex-sister-in-law, that made new claims about his behavior. Now, you'll recall that on Inauguration Day, on a strict party line vote of 14-13, Hegseth's nomination was sent out of committee to the floor with an approval 14-13. It was 14 Republicans, 13 Democrats. Roger Wicker of Mississippi is the chairman of that committee. But yesterday, the NPR received an affidavit from multiple sources familiar with the matter who were not able to share the affidavit publicly. Danielle Hegseth, Pete Hegseth's former sister-in-law, submitted the affidavit in response to a letter from Senator Jack Reed, Democrat of Rhode Island, who sought her personal knowledge, this is a quote, her personal knowledge about Mr. Hegseth's fitness to occupy this important position. Jack Reed, a military veteran himself, and the ranking member of that committee requested this. In that sworn affidavit, Danielle Hegseth says that it is her personal opinion that Hegseth is unfit for the position of Secretary of Defense. In an email to NBC News, which first reported the story, Hegseth said, quote, "First and foremost, I have not and will not comment on my marriage to Pete Hegseth. I do not have representatives speaking on my behalf, nor have I ever asked anyone to share or speak about the details of my marriage on my behalf, whether it be a reporter, a committee member, a transition team member, etc." A lawyer for Pete Hegseth dismissed the allegations. Sam has never alleged that there was any abuse. Nonetheless, the panel's top Democrats said the affidavit should give the Senate pause. This is Reed. As I have said for months, the reports of Mr. Hegseth's history of alleged sexual assault, alcohol abuse, and public misconduct necessitate an exhaustive background investigation. I've been concerned that the background check process has been inadequate, and this sworn affidavit confirms that. Several Republican senators dismissed those allegations. Wicker said that they will proceed, with that. And so, if you listen to what was said then about about the Hegseth nomination going forward, I believe it was John Thune who said that it will be advanced. But some of the quotes from other Republicans are fascinating. Armed Service Committee Chair Roger Wicker, as we mentioned, told reporters the next would be on cloture. That would be the next vote would be Thursday afternoon. That's the end of debate. Wicker dismissed the affidavit alleging that Samantha Hegseth once hid in her closet from the nominee because she feared for her safety.
Whoa.
Wicker says, "I have not reviewed the document. Sending it to the floor, he voted for him. My reaction is that I have grave doubts as to the substance." He has not reviewed it, but he has grave doubts as to the substance. Wicker pointed to Samantha Hegseth's statement denying that there's any physical abuse in the relationship. "I think the nomination is going to go forward and the next vote is going to be Thursday." He said Democrats could delay a final vote until late on Friday night. Lindsey Graham, you all know Lindsey Graham, ran for president, friend of Trump, enemy of Trump, friend of Trump, enemy of Trump, friend of Trump. He voted on that, and so he said, "I heard what his wife said. It didn't happen. I'm getting tired of this."
Know? Who are these people to say anything? You know what? It
shows me what his wife said. I mean, it's crazy, right? I heard what his wife said. It didn't happen.
How does he know this? How does he know this? Oh, because he's decreed that it didn't happen. It didn't happen. Is there anything that Pete Hegseth can do to have these people not vote for him? Or is he so ingrained with the Trump administration and the bro culture and the, white guys can do no wrong? And trust me, I love a white guy, so I get it. But come on. Here we have a guy who had a sexual assault investigation against him, who now one of his former family members is coming forward and saying he's so scary I had to hide in a closet. And who is Lindsey Graham to say otherwise? This is outrageous.
Yeah, that's exactly it. You can say, it's still a little crazy, but you can say, I don't care what this woman said. I'm voting for Hegseth. I think he'll be a great Secretary of Defense. I read what she said. It doesn't impact my opinion. But to say, I read it, it didn't happen, or I heard it, it didn't happen, is beyond the pale. Like, I just cannot believe that that someone could get away with saying that is really what it is. I mean, I can't believe it.
This is a guy that we're going to have lead our military, right? Our military services, our defense. And we already have a problem in the military with sexual assaults. This is someone who should be leading by example. And what do we have at every turn? He gets accused of something else.
Right. Yeah. It's constant. And then Graham asked if the sworn claims from Hegseth's former sister-in-law that the nominee frequently drank to excess bothered him. Graham waved off the question, said, "Nah, I'm good."
Oh.
All right.
Wow.
Yeah. So this vote is probably the senators will move to Hegseth tomorrow, Thursday, and then they're going to vote to confirm John Ratcliffe as CIA director. They tried to confirm Ratcliffe last night, but Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut pushed that, said that we needed to have more debate on it. He said, I think we should just have a full debate on Ratcliffe. A lot of us have real reservations about somebody with a history of politicizing intelligence, like demanded a full debate on most all of Biden's cabinet and sub-cabinet nominees, Murphy told The Hill. I think it's pretty rich that Republicans blocked hundreds of Biden's national security nominees and are now complaining when we're simply asking for 2 days of debate on one of the most important members of Trump's national security team. Thune said Tuesday evening he now expects the next procedural vote on Hegseth to take place Thursday and a final vote to happen late Friday or conceivably early Saturday morning. So Democrats can't do much, right? They can.
Well, it doesn't matter what it doesn't matter what they say. It doesn't matter what the debate is going to be. The guy's going to get voted in. Right. Because the Republicans in power want him voted in. So I guess, what's the point of the debate then? I guess you could have all of these allegations as a matter of public record. Maybe that's a little embarrassing, but as a practical reality, what's the point? Just have the vote, be done with it, because we all know what's going to happen.
Right. And we do know what's going to happen, but I think that, and for good reason, I think it's good to get on the record in debate. I don't think just dispensing with something. First of all, it's kind of like anything can happen in a day. We heard this affidavit yesterday. Had he been voted on the day previous or on inauguration day, we wouldn't have heard that. It didn't end up mattering, but something like that could matter. And also getting senators on the record on debate so that if Republican says something glowing about Pete Hegseth or John Ratcliffe, and a Democrat were to say something, excoriating that person or those persons, then it's on the record. And I think it's important to have that. So to that end, I get it. Also, you do all you can, right? I mean, you fight until you can't fight anymore, which Democrats tend not to do. So I think in the sort of contagious spirit of what they need to do now, this is good form, and I think that's important.
Yeah.
I want to also point out that Luis, thank him, $1.99, says Hegseth is just another DUI hire. Denise Pat with a super sticker, 1999. So grateful. Thank you so much, both of you, and for participating in the show. It's really, really appreciated.
I was just going to say, speaking of Luis's comment and the DUI hire situation, did you see that? Was it Trump has decided to attack DEI hires? They're saying what they want to do is basically put all federal DEI employees on paid leave. So they're directing all federal diversity, equity, and inclusion employees be placed on paid leave by tonight. There was a memo that came out yesterday from the U.S. Office of Personnel Management. And what it said was that it directed heads of departments and agencies to place staff on leave and remove all website and social media accounts related to diversity, equity, and inclusion and accessibility by tonight at 5 p.m. Eastern. So I guess if you were hired as part of the DEI, you're going to be placed on leave and investigated. Is that what the story is?
It seems that way. There are people in schools, they're in universities, in offices, in governmental affairs places, but public universities that are frightened that they're going to be laid off. They were hired and they're not going to have a job because of the fact that they were hired in the first place. And this is pretty dangerous. Reversing a policy is one thing, but reversing a policy and then punishing its beneficiaries because you just disagree with it in principle is really abhorrent to me, you know.
It's really surprising that you would target people in this way. This is people's livelihoods. What are you going to do? I mean, do you have a whole slate of white people that you want to march into offices and put in those seats anyway? What are you saying, they're not doing a good job because they happen to be someone that was, that inclusion was used as part of the hiring process? Are they not in these positions doing the work of the American people? I don't understand.
Right. And again, you can you can disagree with the policy, right? That one thing. But then change the policy, but don't punish the people who unwittingly were beneficiaries of it. I mean, if you were African American, you were hired to a job. You don't lose that job because you were hired. You say, well, we're going to change this policy. Everyone, when they reversed the laws on affirmative action in public universities, when the Supreme Court ruled on that, they didn't kick everyone out of the university who got in because of affirmative action initiatives, but they changed the way admission would work going forward. For better or worse, that's up to other people to decide. But it's a hideous way of enacting a change when that change is something that you wanted to put in place. Just do it, but don't punish people for it. And
it's very mean-spirited, I have to say. It's very mean-spirited. And right now you have people at federal agencies, the EPA, the Department of Education, that forget the DEI thing. They're already freaked out that they're not going to have a job. They're afraid that these agencies are going to be eliminated. And now you add putting DEI hires on leave, and what you have is a federal workforce that it's freaked out. I mean, imagine the morale right now if you're a federal employee.
Right. And it's one thing if you're enacting policies, right? If you got a job to oversee DEI initiatives, right? In whatever department. You're at the Air Force and you're in charge of DEI at the Air Force. B.W. Roth says elections have consequences. This is who America is. Well, they do have consequences, but just because they're put into place doesn't mean you can't react to them and try and change them if you don't like them. I'm not denying that elections have consequences. We're living 3 or 4 days of consequences right now, but reacting to them and trying to figure out ways around them or to fight back at them is also as American as elections having consequences, I would argue. But it's one thing if you're eliminating positions of people, let's say at the Air Force, right? I made that up, but if there's someone in charge of DEI at the Air Force, and you're no longer implementing DEI. Well, the person who was hired to implement DEI, I would understand their position becoming unnecessary at that point. But people who are beneficiaries of this, and this is a friend of mine who I spoke to today at a large public university, said that's what they're trying to figure out now is whether or not those people are the people who are going to be eliminated. And you don't, it becomes, as teacher Lori G says, how can they tell if someone was hired because of DEI? Don't think that's usually in a record somewhere.
Right.
I don't know the answers to all of this, and I know what the reporting has said, and these are difficult times to navigate around this. And Natalie Alejandro says that's insane. When these people were hired, there's no checkbox in the personnel firing saying they were hired due to any particular policy. Again, that's true, and there are people who were hired to implement DEI, and that was their job, and their job has become at this point a little bit out of reach because we don't need it anymore for the moment. So, we will move on from DEI now. We will move on from John Thune and Pete Hegseth, and we will go. I mean, it's a day that we started talking about the environment. We started talking about what is going on in the world with the climate, Kim, because we saw a man skating really well on in New Orleans, 4 inches of snow in the French Quarter, snowmen being made in Pensacola, Florida. Maybe Matt Gaetz, who represented that district, was out there making a snowman. All throughout the Southeast, weather that they certainly don't see very often. I'm not sure when it last snowed in New Orleans or in Pensacola, Florida, but it certainly snowed, and it got a lot of people kind of excited. But there are reasons behind that too. And while it's fun to make snowmen, maybe that's not what they should be doing in Pensacola, but I'll let others tell me that. We have now, as we do on Wednesdays, Belinda Waymouth joining us with It's the Planet, Stupid.
The planet Earth.
Some call me nature.
I am very passionate about the planet.
Earth. A living, breathing planet capable of sustaining whatever life forms we see fit to deposit on it.
Spock, judging by the pollution content of the atmosphere, I believe we have arrived.
It's the planet stupid.
No. It's the planet stupid.
So, Belinda, before we get into whatever it is that we need to talk about, there was someone hi skating, and hi to you too. I didn't get to interview you last week because Mark did a pre-tape with you, and just want to know, you're all right? Everybody's safe in Weymouth World?
We are. Thank you so much. We are safe in Weymouth World. We did have a big branch come down on our roof in the winds on Tuesday night. But luckily I had the tree cabled because I knew that it was a danger to our house. And the cable actually, there were two branches, and the big one that fell down, the cable onto the other one stopped it from crashing into our roof. It just, broke and then hung there. And that is minuscule in comparison to what so many thousands of people are going through. I have friends who've lost everything. I know I'm incredibly lucky. It was a little bit scary, but nothing like the terror I know so many other Californians have faced and are facing now in the aftermath of it.
It's an astonishing thing, and it's really hard to fathom what people are dealing with. I can't even put.
It's almost impossible. It's almost impossible,
Right. When there are no words, sometimes there really are no words. It's like there's nothing in the English language that describes the feeling of seeing a place so devastated, and that it's happened to those people. It's incredible too that most people and the numbers of people who survived were astonishing in light of the devastation too. So that's good.
Yeah. The loss is so monumental, and I think we'll be reeling from it and coming to terms with it, I think, for a very long time. And this is the same, with all these, disasters that happen, the flooding and the heat waves and the things that the planet is going through, and also, they may be loving this cold snap on the, in states that don't normally get snow, Florida. I've got a friend in New Orleans who's thrilled at the snow.
Right.
But, there are already deaths from the cold weather. We can't cope with temperatures that get, down. Once we get to 90, our body temperature gets down to 95, we're in danger of hypothermia. We can't get too hot. We can't get too cold,
Right. So Belinda, let's talk about, I have one question about New Orleans and because I was really taken. I lived in New Orleans at one point. I was really taken with the images of snow in the French Quarter. It was beautiful, and skating on Canal Street was beautiful because I play hockey. There's this gentleman skating on Canal Street, now skating toward the river there on Canal Street. It's just great, and so I like every time something like this happens. I mean, can we still be excited about it and think it's really cool and it's a once in a lifetime or it's a once in a blue moon thing without it being Chicken Little, the sky is falling? I mean, I know we reflexively go to climate change as we ought to, but sometimes, this is pretty cool.
You're going to make me be the downer on the snow that people are loving. As you know, we're in this incredible, moment with the planet. And a thing that I was talking about with Mark last week, and I actually sent over a visual, and I was saying to Tony, have it on standby, we could show it. What happens when you have this atmosphere that has so much more moisture in it, and how it makes the planet so much more volatile. Because what this shows you here is, for every degree that the planet warms, the atmosphere is able to hold 7% more moisture. And it's the moisture in the atmosphere that's driving the droughts. When the planet is super hot and the atmosphere can, evaporate all the moisture basically out of the earth because, the temperatures are so hot that water evaporates, it goes up into the atmosphere. And then when the atmosphere gets into a situation where it's ready to drop that water, it's got even more water in it to, make the floods more devastating than they actually are. With an extra 3 degrees, it can hold 22% more water. And the water also is the thing. Water vapor, turning into ice and back again, releases so much energy in the atmosphere that's what makes the hurricanes and the tornadoes, these superstorms that we experience. And right now what's happening, and that's just one thing, that's, sort of extreme weather events that we're having. And I really want to get on to, what's happened this week for the climate.
No, we will. But I think people have, we've really been,
So the thing also that
a lot of time looking at this,
yeah. So the thing that's happening right now with this, intense cold weather. So, you hear about the polar vortex all the time. So the polar vortex is this sort of, it's like a loose rubber band. It sits at 60 degrees latitude north. So it's just sort of around the Arctic Circle. And basically what the polar vortex does is it holds the weather in place, the really cold air over the Arctic Circle, and then the warmer air is underneath this. I'm trying to make it look like a rubber band. So this rubber band vortex, and it keeps the planet livable. But what happens is it goes wonky now because we've got such a disparity in temperatures, and the Arctic is heating up 4 times faster than anywhere else on the planet. So the polar vortex is really sort of reeling and doing this sort of crazy kind of, these gyrations because as you lose ice and you get dark ocean absorbs more heat. Ice and white reflect, the heat, the energy from the sun back into the atmosphere. But once that ice is melted, you get hotter and hotter seawater. So the Arctic becomes more temperamental. And we've seen this in the last couple of years. I mean, remember when we had those crazy storms in Texas? They had no electricity. They had all that ice and snow. They were freezing. People died. They didn't have the capacity to get electricity from other states because they're a band of one. They are completely self-reliant with their energy, and it was a disaster. And I don't want to rain on people's parade because I get, snow is fun and building a snowman. Yes, I wish it snowed in my backyard yesterday. But we, we're really seeing incredibly temperamental weather. This right on top of these disastrous California fires, and now we have a second Trump administration, and he came in. Blazing basically a fire torch at all his eco peeves, everything that he doesn't want us to be part of, or, the hoax of climate change, he wants to dismantle right away. And I would argue this might not be the time to be doing that.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, again, he won, and elections have consequences, as we said earlier, but this is a consequence that should supersede American politics. This is the globe coming together, and the world and community of nations coming together to try and address something that is real. And we are the holdouts here. And so tell me what you can about what the ramifications, even if briefly, are of stepping out of this. We can all raise our fists in frustration over the fact that it's happening, but what are some of the facts about it that would help understand why it's terrible?
Okay. Well, one of the craziest things with stepping out of the Paris Climate Accord for a second time is that this basically it's a complete sort of kowtowing to the fossil fuel, lobbyists, the companies that spent millions and millions of dollars to help get him reelected. I mean, this drill, baby, drill. You're saying you're doing what these CEOs of ExxonMobil, etc., want, but you're not doing what the American people want, pulling us out of Paris. So a poll recently showed that only 2 out of 10, so only a fifth of Americans believe that we should be pulled out of Paris. 80% of his constituents don't believe that. And obviously the timing is crazy. We knew that he was going to do it. He told us he was going to do it. But here's the thing: it will take a year for it to become official because you don't just pull out of it. It takes a year. So there'll be another COP at the end of the year in Brazil, and there will be Americans there as part of the discussions. Hopefully. But after that, in a year's time, we'll be joining a team of winners. The other countries that are not part of the Paris Climate Accord are Libya, Yemen, and Iran. So we'll be part of that team that says no to an international climate agreement. And the thing about it is, Trump doing this really puts sort of American exceptionalism first, because the policy that he signed, which was part of, pulling us out of Paris, is called, and I'll read it here, Putting America First in International Environmental Agreements. Absolute nonsense, because here's the thing that's so crazy is by pulling us out of this international agreement that by the way, is not a ripoff. It's not binding. You don't have to meet the emissions reductions that you might have pledged. Even though developed countries have talked about giving developing countries money to help them mitigate and adapt to, the real brunt of climate change that they're already feeling with, sea level rise and storms. None of that is actually, really concretely happening. In fact, it's being walked back. But the thing that we really do is that we lose any political influence in really shaping what is a booming green energy, a booming green energy moment. This is happening. And this is the thing that I talk about all the time, is it's like we're in a period of change. Human beings hate change, and it's a real push-pull. And so what we're seeing with, each, consecutive administration here, you go from Obama to Trump, we go backwards on environmental things. Biden comes in, we go forwards again. And then Trump comes in and he wants to renege on everything. But we're really... we're not doing ourselves any favor, because this, clean tech revolution is happening, and this move to renewables. And one of the things that's kind of ironic is one of the first things that he said is, no more offshore wind. It's a blight to our natural environment, and it doesn't help our energy needs. Well, that's just not true, Mr. President. And the thing that's wild is, do you know which state produces the most energy from wind by far? Texas. Texas produces more than double the amount of renewable energy that we produce here in California. And then after Texas, you've got 3 other red states. You've got Oklahoma, Kansas, and Iowa. They are huge wind producers. So, you are saying no to any, new offshore wind. You want to pull back on wind projects that are already, in place, in installation, the process of that happening on federal lands. But you've got these 4 red states. They're not going to stop making the money, they want that revenue that renewable energy generates. And the other thing is that the guy he's talked about being his energy secretary, when he was in hearings last week, he didn't disavow wind. He said he would keep all energy options on the table. So it's like I said, we're going to be in this crazy push-pull. And the thing with wind, I mean, wind is a no-brainer. We generate enough wind in these states to power the whole of the continental US. Our offshore wind is so abundant, we could generate enough electricity for the continental US twice over.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
And we know that. The other thing that I always found amazing too, when I was out on the campaign trail, was the notion that we are now, I mean, I don't know today, but there were, and I think it's probably today, taking more oil out of the ground in the United States than we ever have in the history of this country. And that notion, up to next to drill, baby, drill, is an astonishing thing. Well, we are drilling, baby. We're drilling, right? And we're taking more out. I have no opinion. I mean, I do have an opinion, but I'm not stating an opinion on it. It's a fact, and that's what's happening. And as an oil producing nation, we're doing our part, yet they feel like there's more that needs to be done because it's a good campaign slogan, and it flies into. And what's really important too, I think, about the Green New Deal, but also about the Paris Climate Accord, is that it's aspirational. And we need to do aspirational things in this country, because that is, it's saying we're going to go to the moon in 10 years. That's that's part of the American credo in that way. And I think that this is that for these times. And that's a big part of what dropping out takes away from America.
Yeah, absolutely. And we give all these other countries the lead in, I mean, China is stepping into the void that the US is creating by doing this. And, they're already producing more solar panels than we are, and the tariffs will, make it very difficult for the importing of these, solar panels and parts. And it's just a step backward when, yes, we could be the leaders. It's so not a visionary moment. It's so not, like you say, like what America has sort of prided itself on, that, that aspirationally, when Kennedy said, we're going to put a man on the moon, it got Americans excited, and you could get Americans really excited about this transition, and it would be, for our benefit. It would absolutely be for our benefit, not, to our detriment. And unfortunately, this drill, baby, drill. And the other thing that's crazy about it, when he talks about, that there's a national energy emergency, it's not about oil and gas, because as you said, we're drilling more of that than ever. It's actually about renewables and how quickly we need to move to them. And under Biden, and with all this, this incredible increase in the drilling, did it reduce prices of energy? It doesn't. So what he's saying isn't even true. The thing that he's claiming is he's going to reduce the price of energy and reduce inflation. That hasn't happened so far. That hasn't happened under Biden. Do you think it's going to magically happen under you?
Right. That's exactly it. I mean, that's part of it. We don't have a lot of time. I do want to ask you quickly about California.
Yeah.
So two things. One is the dryness, which is something I know you want to talk about, but also the opposite of that. There's rain expected. Tell me briefly why that's both good and bad, and how we want to have just a little bit of rain in California, but not too much.
Yeah. Well, the terrible thing that happens, and we had this in Montecito, just up by Santa Barbara, I think it was back in 2017 when we had those awful mudslides, is that after the fires and after you lose all your vegetation, you lose everything that holds onto the soil. And so if you get a real deluge of rain, you can have these awful mudslides, and those are completely damaging too. And this is what we're seeing. Last week I was talking about with Mark this thing called this hydroclimate whiplash, where not just California but lots of places in the world, they go from this period where they're having incredible rains, which we did over the 2023-2024 winter. We had we were deluged with rain in Southern California and in Northern California. Right now, we haven't been getting rain in Southern California, but that incredible amount of weather with producing snow and water and filling up the aquifers causes all the vegetation to grow. And then we get this whiplash with the hydroclimate, and we get a period of drought. We've had, no rain this winter since October. We've at Los Angeles has had 0.16 of an inch of rain. So we've been in this incredibly dry situation, and it meant that there was all this fuel for the fires, and we've had these fires. And now if we got, in an incredible inundation of rain, we wouldn't be in a good position, because the other thing, as we saw with the fires, they were all in the hills, because the incredible Santa Anas came zooming down the hills. And the hills are where the mudslides, could really be detrimental.
Yeah,
it's a back and forth. It's really intense. So yeah, I wanted to show this because we had one of our listeners, actually a woman from Australia. She brought up something that I mentioned last week, and I want to correct that. So this shows you, we had very severe Santa Ana winds back in 2011, but as you can see there was only a tiny area of, extreme, of drought, and it wasn't even extreme. But this year, January 7th, when we got those incredible Santa Anas, we had a lot of places in drought, and that's why there was so much fuel, and the fires were so incredibly destructive. And it's being written about this hydroclimate whiplash that we're going, between two, a very arid climate and a very moist climate, and how dangerous that is.
It's that tells you everything you need to know and how quickly it changed. There are going to be people who say it's anomalous, but when you see the results of it, it's hard to argue against it. It's also hard, Belinda Waymouth, to argue against the scientists who tell us it's so. So don't listen to me.
Yeah, and I want to, Tony, could you show us the graph of the Santa Anas? It's the one with the red bars, and it shows the amount of Santa Ana winds and then the area burned. I just wanted to put that up quickly because last week when I was talking about it, I actually misspoke, and I was talking about how I said the red side showed the prevalence of the Santa Anas and the other side showed how they increased, the Santa Anas increased the fires, but actually what the right-hand one shows is the area burned. So you can see that the area burnt during a Santa Ana event is really huge. So I just wanted to clarify that. And I wanted to quickly, do we have a minute to tell you some good news that's happening in federal agencies, particularly the EPA?
We always have 1 minute for good news. Okay.
Okay. So what happened during the first Trump administration was so detrimental and awful for people in the EPA. And, scientists were so demoralized and were leaving by the hundreds, climate change and anything to do with the environment was being wiped off their websites and they were being completely discredited. Well, on day one of Biden's administration, they started putting up firewalls and protections for themselves in case what happened on Monday happened, that we had an incoming administration that was going to once again try to get rid of any mention of climate change and environmental science and all those things. And so these are the things they've put in place. So they are called scientific integrity policies, and they're created to protect scientific research and also the publishing of it. Because obviously, to protect Americans, science needs to be unbiased. And that's what our federal scientists are trying to do. They're trying to do research that protects us, and it can't be have political interference and be biased. And so what they've done is they have these scientific integrity officers in place to make sure these policies are adhered to. We now have 30 of them in the EPA and different organizations. During Trump, there were less than 12. They tell scientists what to do if political appointees try to block their science and research. There are penalties for such violations by these politicians. There are actually, penalties that have been put in place. And then there are new union contracts with consequences for political appointees who try to retaliate against scientists who they see as not upholding what, an administration that says, climate change is a hoax, etc. is. So, and these scientists, there are scientists who have, came back in the thousands under the Biden administration. And some of them are saying, look, we have the mettle, we have the experience to know how to weather, the onslaught that we're going to get against our work. And you have to applaud them, because I think this is super brave to know that you're going to be standing up to an administration that wants to undermine everything you do and really penalize and hurt you. But you're there saying, no, the science is important. And And we also have mayors and other government officials who have said, hey, Trump, you may be pulling America out of the Paris Climate Accord, but we're not. Our cities are still in it. I mean, the mayor of Phoenix has said, this is about our constituents, and we're not pulling out of Paris. We will be in the Paris Climate Accord. So it's not just he comes in and says it's over, and it's over, because there are so many organizations, government officials, scientists, experts who aren't saying, no to science, and that climate change, is a hoax, because you say it is.
Well, that is indeed good news, and we'll take it wherever we can find it. Belinda Waymouth, thank you so much. It is, as we know, and as we say all the time, it's the planet, stupid.
Yeah, our planet, our home.
Exactly.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Belinda.
Okay.
Thanks so much.
See you.
So
more.
It's the planet, stupid. No, it's the planet, stupid.
Next time, only on the Mark Thompson Show.
Right. I haven't gotten that one down yet. The when you say it, the how you say it. But
you're doing great. You're awesome.
But it was done, Mark did it last week, and I've only done it. It was only my second time.
Hey, which one of you is Mark Thompson?
No, sorry. But he will be back tomorrow, and we thank Belinda Waymouth, and we thank John Rothmann today. Mark will be back tomorrow. I thank Luis, who asked if my beer league team, if I play in a beer league hockey team, he gave $4.99. He asked if I've ever hoisted the Stanley Keg. No, we lost in overtime in the final game once, but the Honey Badgers have yet to prevail, but we're 2-0 this season. Hey, thanks, everybody. Mark, like I said, will be back. You are a tremendous, bright, and inquisitive audience, and it's always fun to sit in here with Kim and with Albert, and anyone can call him Tony if they want, I guess. And we say to you until next time. I'll be here Friday talking politics again, but I don't know when I'll be back in this seat, but you get your boy back tomorrow. That's all.
Looking forward to it. After Party Live is next. Bye, Michael Schur. Bye-bye.
I'm Shadow Stevens for the Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
All the time. Bye-bye.